Lift off. Point of no order.
Well, in the previous hour, you missed out on a conversation lapho besikhuluma khona about the dangerous consumption and trading of counterfeit and illicit alcohol in South Africa. We've seen ukuthi the unregulated and illegally produced alcohol iflata kangakanani, the streets and indawo isijabula kuzona, and often unzima to tell the difference between what is fake and what is real, because the fake is packaged in a packaging that is almost identical to loku owangempela. And so as consumers, we are being misled, and in many cases impilo zabantu zibekwe engcupheni just for a quick buck. The economy and the losses that it's suffering is just as alarming as the number of lives that are being lost and negatively affected. There are billions that are lost in tax revenue and through laba who are trading legally, because that means their costs are higher kuna laba abadayisa loku okungebona. So right now on the line, I'm joined by the CEO of the Beer Association of South Africa, Charlene Louw, to explore the scale of this crisis, nanokuthi impact that it has on the industry and consumers ingakanani outside of logo ebesixoxa ngako in the previous hour. Charlene, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking time to speak to us about an issue that is affecting us very, very negatively, to the point where a lot of people have lost their lives.
Yes, thank you so much, Njabs. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, indeed, this illicit alcohol is a problem in our society. And what we have seen in a recent study that was commissioned by the industry is that this is an industry that has a value of 25 billion rand. Yeah. So it's huge. It is competing with legal alcohol. But the dangers, though, are what perhaps our communities and our consumers are not understanding. And that is why I'm quite happy to be on the show to just discourage consumers against some of the illicit alcohol that we're seeing in the market.
Now, there's two words, Charlene, that we've been using very often since the beginning of this conversation, and those words are illicit and counterfeit. Before we continue with the conversation, please just highlight the key differences between the two so that nati we understand as consumers ukuthi yini illicit, yini counterfeit.
So counterfeit is what you would call refilling in old bottles. So they will wash out, for instance, an old bottle and put in a diluted version of either spirits or wine. There is fake labeling as well, that is also known as counterfeit. But maybe to put it in a very simple term for listeners is just what is almost like a lookalike brand. So it looks like a Smirnoff, but it's not a Smirnoff. It has been mimicked to look like maybe a Smirnoff. And I'm calling out a brand perhaps that many consumers are familiar with. Then illicit also involves smuggling. You have to understand that alcohol that crosses borders as well is deemed illicit, which is one part of that conversation. Then there's what we call concoctions, the one that is brewed by people and is essentially poured into bottles that even are not mimicking any product or anyone's product. It's just this distilled liquid or this brewed liquid that is then sold. Many a time it's sold for about 10 rands, if not less. Sometimes it's also in the form of wine in plastic 5-liter bottles that goes for about 30 rand or so in certain communities. That is the concoction that I believe we need to be very, very clear with consumers. It is not good for human consumption.
Sure. Now, for me, and I said this earlier, Charlene, Uguti, I realized that there was this issue on the South African market with counterfeit alcohol and concoctions, as you put it, at the beginning of COVID, when abantu were experimenting with their own concoctions using yeast and using certain fruits, etc. Would you also then, as a member of this association, say this is where we saw a sharp rise in the production of this counterfeit alcohol and the concoctions that we're seeing on the market?
Illegal or illicit alcohol has been in the market for many, many years. But I accept that during COVID, in the same way we saw with the tobacco industry, COVID elevated the presence, the availability, the accessibility of illicit alcohol. And essentially, with those restrictions, people found ways now to brew, to distill, and they found a market. And a market, obviously, that we understand that we have communities that don't have a lot of money, people's pockets are stretched, everyone is looking for a cheaper option, and they found a very ripe scenario to operate in. And that's why we can safely say now that illegal alcohol is competing with legal alcohol, which is not a scenario that we want to see. I think what we also saw in COVID, we saw people die. Abantu bayafa from this illicit and this counterfeit alcohol. I think that's the one thing we need to stress and emphasize. There were many deaths. There continue to be deaths. There's underreporting in our country around deaths that are caused by this illicit alcohol, but these deaths do exist.
Now, there are many categories of alcohol, Charlene, and it would seem there are those that are concocted more often than others. It seems like there is a particular type of alcohol that is counterfeited more than lokogunye. So out of mhlawumbe amawayini, spirits, or beer, ciders, what is the biggest problem in terms of the counterfeits that we're seeing on the market?
The biggest problem is with spirits.
Okay.
That is where we are finding the most counterfeit, but also the most illegal brews, if I can put it that way, and the illegal distillation of this alcohol. What we have found is that in testing this alcohol, we have found that it is not at the right alcohol levels that are good for human consumption. Some of what has been found in this testing are things like acetone. Acetone, the stuff that you wipe your nail polish off with, for instance.
Nail polish remover, Charlene.
Nail polish remover.
No way.
We have found things like mentholated spirits in testing some of this alcohol. So it is very dangerous.
Obunye bunuka ngathi kuno paraffin. Do you find that?
Exactly. Yes, we do. We do. And that's the biggest telltale sign, because I think consumers don't always know how to
tell the difference.
Spot the difference.
Yeah.
But more often than not, the smell will tell you this is illegal or illicit alcohol, or even counterfeit, a look-alike, because you'll find that usual spirit smell from the legal alcohol will smell probably more potent, harsher than what you would find with the legal alcohol. So the smell of almost all the time will be your first telltale sign to see that you're not drinking something that is proper.
My goodness. All right, so we've got one telltale sign from Charlene Louw, the CEO of the Beer Association of South Africa. We are looking for more telltale signs, because now, outside of sniffing our food, now we must sniff our alcohol. I mean, you can't sniff for every single drink that you have. So are there more practical ways that we can try and tell the difference between what's real and what's not when it comes to counterfeit, illicit alcohol, and also concoctions? If you have any questions that you'd like to ask Charlene, please do give us a call, 0861 596 596. Lengxoxo is not just for my benefit. It affects you on a very real level as well. So this is your opportunity to ask one of AMA CEOs, AMA Association, related to alcohol in the country. 0861 596 596.
The liftoff, point of no order.
We continue our conversation around the shocking 25 billion rand industry around illicit alcohol, counterfeit alcohol, nama concoctions that people serve to unsuspecting members of the public, and this sometimes has very, very dire consequences. On the line, we're joined today by the CEO of the Beer Association of South Africa, Charlene Louw. We are about how serious this issue is and how we as consumers can protect ourselves. Charlene, you mentioned one of the ways as consumers we can try and tell the difference between what is real what has been put together in the framework that's been set out by the South African law is by smelling it. If kunente sinukayo and it doesn't smell like it's supposed to be there, i.e. paraffin, methylated spirits, acetone, then that should be a huge red flag for us. Are there any other ways that we can use to try and tell the difference between what's real and what's fake with what we're about to drink? Mhlampe, can we scan a barcode? Can we look at the labels, the color? There has to be more than just smelling it.
No, absolutely. The labeling is also one of those that you will be able to notice. At times, your counterfeit, you'll find that there are many spelling errors.
Spelling. No way.
Yes.
How could spell check?
You'll find that the corporate colors that they have on the labeling are not the same as the legal alcohol.
Okay.
The others, you'll find that there's a broken seal that has been replaced. At times, you'll find that the filling of the bottle, as they refill these used bottles, you'll find that the labeling is not the same. Some bottles have more in quantity, others have a little less.
Okay.
But I think the things that are the most obvious, the price. If the price is too good to be true, it is.
So if you are used to buying itampi for 40 Rand, I'll make an example, and you're getting it for 20 Rand or 18 Rand, it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't be that way. Retail pricing across the different provinces, yes, there may be slight differentials, but it is mostly consistent across most of the provinces. And so once you see that you are buying, for instance, a bottle of something at 100 Rand and it's meant to cost you 400 Rand, that already must tell you that there's a problem. So the pricing is unusually low, whether it's spirits, it's wine, it's beer, and often enough when it's that low, stay away from it.
Right.
That is the biggest telltale sign of when you know this is illicit.
I always say you can look for bargains across many different things that you use on a daily basis, but if it's something that you are going to eat, if it's something that's going into your body, I really don't feel like you should be looking for the lowest price available on the market.
I absolutely agree with you. However, I think we operate and we live in a country where abantu bayahlupheka.
Yeah, I'm talking from a point of privilege.
Yes. And I don't think somebody very easily opts to drink that kind of alcohol.
Yeah.
But if they are an alcohol consumer and that is what they are then able to afford, they're almost pushed to it by this illicit market. But I suppose that's why we're here to try and educate a little bit more. I would really rather encourage consumers to head towards legal alcohol, because this is alcohol, number one, that the ingredients are known and tested, the alcohol content is tested, the safety for consumption is tested independently, by the way, by regulators, and it is safe for human consumption in moderation, of course. But this other stuff that we're seeing out in the market has not gone through that type of testing. And already we've got a very heavily burdened health system. We don't need to burden it even further, where people are finding themselves in these public facilities with alcohol poisoning and other effects of this type of alcohol after it has been consumed. So it really just is for us as an industry to educate more, have more campaigns, and drive a little bit more communication and understanding around the dangers.
Now, we're sitting here and we are talking about the dangers of consuming this type of liquor and how problematic it is for our economy. But what are we doing to clamp down on this problem? Are we seeing arrests from abantu okuyibona abakhiqizayo lobutshwala? Are we seeing them being convicted? Or are we getting any closer to winning this war?
This war, sadly, we are chasing a moving target.
That's discouraging.
It is very discouraging. I wish I had more positive news. In KZN alone in Durban, there was a 400 million rand bust.
Angzwanga. Say that again?
This 400 million bust in May of this year in KZN. Durban, for instance, makes up 21% of all counterfeit alcohol that is sold in the country. So that's huge. It's second to Gauteng. And the Western Cape. And so those are the top 3 provinces, if I can put it that way. So the problem is very prevalent in the KZN region. So the busts are happening, but the busts are dependent on consumers reporting, on the intelligence of SAPS, of course. And, the unfortunate part, of course, it's a challenge not only of enforcement. We know we don't have enough SAPS officials, so the officials that are going out there and raiding and busting and seizing these illicit or counterfeit, goods, they're doing their best, but there aren't enough of them. So we have a capacity issue within SAPS for this type of thing. But 2, we have a problem with our legislation as well. Because the reality of the matter is the legislation is far too lenient. Many of these illicit or counterfeit manufacturers, they get a fine or very short imprisonment. They're out of there, and then they move on into a different location and they re-establish themselves. And so our laws also need to be changed. And these are some of the conversations that we're having with e-government here too, just to say, can we look at a more stringent outcome as a sanction, not what we're seeing right now, where somebody can be fined 1,500 and then they go and operate somewhere else. That can't be right. But in the meantime, that fine, we're not seeing it that it doesn't remove the problem. There are people, because of those traders, that are falling ill, that are in hospital from the stuff that they are selling. And they themselves don't drink it, the people that are selling it. So it is ironic that our people now are being killed. And that is 1,500 fine as an outcome. It can't be right.
You can't put that price on human life.
Absolutely. And so there's a disjuncture between our laws and essentially what the effect of this illicit alcohol is.
Sure. All right, we're about to wrap up our conversation with Charlene. I'm going to open the lines up once again. If you have any questions, 0861596596. Bengengayibuza lento ukuthi why singavunyelwa to go directly to the source where this alcohol is being made if we are consumers that want to make sure that we are buying the real stuff? Charlene will answer that when we come back.
Njabs Zwane, 9 to 12 p.m. on the Liftoff.
We are wrapping up our conversation with Charlene Louw, the CEO of the Beer Association of South Africa. We've been talking about the dangers of having counterfeit, illicit alcohol on the market, as well as concoctions that are being sold at ridiculously low prices. People are dying. People are experiencing amapapalazi esingagazi our experience in our lives. People are experiencing blindness in certain instances, and so inkinga ngempela lento ukuthi kube nomzamo to the value of 25 billion rand in our South African streets. Now, Charlene, why can I, as Njabs, not go directly to the source that makes my favorite champagne and buy it there, so that I know if anything is untoward with lento engiyiphuzayo, I know where to go to find recourse. Ngoba, the issue here is I'm buying something at my restaurant, right? The restaurant has received consignment from rep Tizeni. The rep has gotten that consignment from somebody else and somebody else. So why don't we just cut out all the middlemen and I go directly to the source?
Yeah. This one is one that is, of course, primarily driven by the Competition Act in our country, as well as your Liquor Act.
Okay.
So there is a separation, and that separation is meant to, without getting too technical, restrict vertical integration. So in other words, prevent monopolies. Just to put it simply, so that you don't have one organization that then becomes a monopoly. They become a manufacturer, a distributor, a retailer. And so this is the main reason why you then can't go directly, for instance, to a brewery and buy there, or directly to a winery and buy there. It is to enable competition within that sector.
So abantu, I had a caller earlier, Uzintle from Pietermaritzburg, and she's a tavern owner. I'm sure there's other establishment owners who sell alcohol to consumers who also don't know, Uguti, if a consumer comes back and says, but this is not the drink that I am used to. This is not a legit product that you have sold to me. How then do the middlemen find recourse? Who do they go to? What steps do they need to take to ensure that they are compensated mhlambe for imali that they've already spent on 20 cases of beer that's fake?
Yeah. I think important is for tavern owners and liquor retailers, even in our townships, to purchase from reputable distributors. And because you see, when we spoke about how can you see an illicit or counterfeit bottle, for instance, there's barcoding, there are seals, and there's serial numbers. There are a number of ways that we are able to then tell whether this particular bottle is legitimate or not. If a retailer in the township or a taverner has found that they were sold by a distributor something that was counterfeit, they need to report that, either to ourselves, even the manufacturer of that particular alcohol. And of course, that's where law enforcement will have to come in, and where that distributor will need to be taken on in terms of them retailing and selling to taverners illegal alcohol. But that is why with all of these, particularly your spirits and of course other alcohol, there's barcoding, there is serial numbering, there batch and lots, all of which tie back to a manufacturer. And if that lot or that serial number is not registered in the lot or the batch of the manufacturer, automatically we know that is an illegal or illicit or counterfeit product, and we can track it as far as where it's then sold, and we can then get law enforcement involved, because you'll find that when they do a raid, it's not just that one bottle, it could be a series of bottles that were sold illicitly by that particular distributor. But we act quite fast on these things, so if there is ever such thing, of course we would intervene quite swiftly.
So mina as an individual consumer, as Njabs nayi ishampeni yami ngiyayivula, ishampeni yami is not make sure, noma ngiyiphuza I can tell ukuthi is not make sure. Who do I call? Do I call Sergeant Mdluli ngithi sayitsheni here's a problem, go raid this place? What's the procedure for me as an individual consumer?
My suggestion would be, there is what we call the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, and they have a hotline that consumers can report to and call in anonymously if they would like to do that. It's 0800 014 856, and they can also even send an email. It's one word, report illicit at cgcsa.co.za. And each and every SAPS office in every province has what they call a flash desk. Flash, not that they go out in a hurry. Just to be clear.
We know that's not the case.
But it stands for the firearm, liquor, second-hand goods desk. So anything illicit that is reported, they must just ask for the flash desk of SAPS, and that's where illicit goods are reported. But I would urge that initially, so that these things can be tested appropriately, the serial numbers or the barcoding can be very easily tested. We rather have consumers call that number that I've just highlighted, and I'm happy to share it again with consumers if you need me to. All
right, I think I got it. It's 0800 014 856, right? That's for the CGC SA number. If you have any suspicions ukuthi mhlambe lento oyithengile ngemali yakho isebenze kanzima futhi, that's another problem. Imali yakho isebenzile ufuna ukuyojabula wena mase bekuthengisela into ekungeyona, there is a number that you can use to report ama establishment or asolayo, 0800 014 856. Charlene, thank you so much for responding when we made the call to you. We have learned an invaluable amount of information to try and protect ourselves as we try and enjoy this thing here called life. Hopefully, Misikhlupa futhi on another day. For more information, you'll be just as willing to come and join us on the show.
Oh, absolutely, Njabonga. Thank you for having me.
Absolute
I appreciate
pleasure.
the talk.